Well, good day. Thank you so much for joining us today on Passion. I'm your host, Britt Ivy, and today we have segment 2 of A is for Attachment, chapter 1 in the Love Safety Net workbook. And this workbook has been written by authors Steve and Kim Cooper, who we have in the studio today with us, all the way from Australia, to speak about their groundbreaking work, revolutionary work, to help heal troubled relationships. So welcome, Steve. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, Britt. Nice to see you again.
Great to see you guys again, too. And we're going to explore more ways to have healthy attachments in relationships today. So I'm excited to have you back in the studio to discuss this important topic. And a lot of people take small, healthy attachment rituals for granted. And in actuality, something as simple as, like when I was a kid, all the dads had like 8x10 photographs of their wives and children on their desks. And this you illustrate in your book is actually a healthy, simple attachment ritual. So why don't you talk a little bit about how that is actually protecting a relationship and how that's healthy?
Oh, certainly. That's something that we really encourage. It's really important that when you're at work, you still have your family around you. Now, you may not have a desk that you can put a picture on. It may even just be a picture of your family that you have in your locker at work. But it's something to keep your family close to you, and also to show that other people around you at your work that you are part of a family.
And that you value that family, that you value them enough to have a picture of them around and you're proud to show it off. So it's really a statement and a gesture.
It's a healthy statement and gesture. I like that. I like that. My dad always had one of my sister and I and his wife, and I think that's really healthy. And you speak about that in chapter 1, A is for Attachment, in one of your 8 books, but today we're specifically speaking about the workbook, and we can go ahead and show a cover of the workbook for a moment. At any time you guys are ready in the studio, there we are. They're so quick to help us. So this is one of the largest tools in your pioneering work, Kim. And why don't you tell the audience a little bit about how this workbook came about for you and what you had to go through to create it?
Sure, I'd love to. Really, the material that has comprised all of our books was myself doing research for to heal our family, because things had really been bad with us for a very long time. I mentioned in the first episode that it was 10 years that we'd been struggling with a very difficult relationship. It was starting to move into where my children were actually starting to speak rudely to us and to each other. And everyone had really basically told me that I didn't have any hope except for to change the locks or for me to leave.
Wow.
And so I had worked already. I'd studied a lot of psychology, and then it was when I actually got into looking into emotional intelligence training and corporate leadership training, I started to find some tools that were more effective and was using them really basically by trial and error. And then, so these notes that I first made for myself became our first book, Back from the Looking Glass. And then when we worked with people for over 2 or 3 years, this set of exercises then developed from people's questions and from taking the work further.
Excellent. Excellent. So you actually studied corporate leadership skills to help heal your own marriage. That's amazing. Yeah. You do address that as well. You do share that negotiation skills are really imperative in building healthy attachment and healthy relationships, because a lack of negotiating skills actually can manifest as abusive behavior. And I think you helped turn around a company even, didn't you? Can you share with our audience a little bit about that? I know people come to you from all walks of life, but a business approached you.
We had someone write to us from California who said that he had actually used, he was the second in charge in a company with a very autocratic and difficult CEO. And he said he had actually adapted our material and used it to turn the company around. Because he couldn't really do anything about the CEO, he'd actually trained all of the upper management and management to be less codependent.
Wow, that's fabulous. That's fantastic. And the company's doing well now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He said that it had just a dramatically positive effect.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
so, also, Brett, I think it's important too that when we talk about negotiations, we talked about FaceTime in the last show. And if you're not able to negotiate within a family or within a close relationship, what you're doing is limiting the amount of time you're actually having talking to each other. Most of what we're doing in the modern world is that we're actually trying to negotiate what everybody needs. And if you don't have those negotiation skills, it's very easy to just slam the door, walk out, become abusive, be sarcastic, or all of the terrible things that can happen if you don't have those skills, if you haven't built those skills. And so what happens is with a negotiation breakdown, you've lost that beautiful opportunity to spend some time with each other, because of course we all seem to want different things sometimes, and we need to have a negotiation, but quite often we all really want the same thing, and it's just about deciding how it is we're going to plan our day, our week, our finances, or whatever it is, so we all get what we need.
That's right. I think most aggression and emotional manipulation is really just poor forms of negotiation.
I agree. That's very powerful to learn something like that. So when somebody's being horrid, it's actually that they may not even know how to admit or acknowledge that they just never learned the skills of how to plan, or how to even schedule or discuss topics that maybe when they were kids became screaming fights in their house. So all they know what to do is, like Steve said, that was very well articulated, just walk out, slam the door, because there's a lack of negotiation skills.
Or even just to know how to ask for what they need, clearly and politely and respectfully. If that wasn't modeled to them growing up, that's going to be a skill that, the family's going to have modeled from somewhere.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of good sense, because really building attachment, building strong attachment, is about how you make somebody feel. And it's not necessarily a beauty contest, or like the world will try to tell you, if you get the latest, best mascara, or surgery, or what have you, that your relationships will be better. And that's not the case. So you actually have some practical applications here for our audience, and wonderful tools for people that really want to turn their relationships around, because people don't want to be in this much pain, and there's a lot of pain out there, and you walked through your pain, and now you're giving the treasure map to how, not that every single relationship will be able to be saved, but certainly quite a lot of them. So we're going to go to clip 1 now, which actually you're addressing some things not to do to build attachment, things that people think might build attachment that actually don't. So we're going to roll to clip 1 now when they're ready in the studio.
The next point that you really should stop doing, if you are, is trying to please your partner. Now, I know that again sounds, counterintuitive. Why shouldn't I try and please them? Won't that make things better? But by you buying your partner gifts, or working too hard at cleaning the house, or making special meals, or doing things to try and impress or please them, again, you really are just actually making yourself look weak and low status.
That's right.
If the person in your life is disrespecting you, is arrogant towards you, is treating you badly, and you really have lost that love connection, you really put yourself in a position of even less power than you are already by doing things to try and impress them and try to please them. Now, I know that was really tough, because that is really what I know a lot of women and a lot of men do feel like doing when their partner is bad to them. They think, well, what can I do, you know?
Well, Kim's books and the things that we're going to share with you along the way, we're going to teach you how to build that kind of connection that you're looking for when you're trying to please people. So when we tell you to stop trying to please your partner with all these kinds of gifts and special occasions and things, we understand that you're just trying to build a good connection, and that's understandable and good, but there's a wrong way to go about that, and there's a right way to go about it. And we'll teach you some of the better ways and the more influential ways of building that connection and attachment in a strong way, in a healthy way, that's going to mean that you're going to have a great relationship with your partner.
And in a way where your partner's going to have more respect for you, and you're going to have more influence with them, and they're going to start to actually want to do the things that you ask them to.
Wonderful. That was an excellent clip as well. And it ended with your website, stopthefights.com, and your other website, thelovesafetynet.com. Both of these websites, your thousands of audience members reach you, and people can reach you through both of those websites. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, that's correct, Britt.
Wonderful. And the workbook, I believe, Steve, that you said the workbook is available download or hard copy?
Yeah, that's right. A download's a very quick and simple way to access the information. If you really need it quite desperately, it's a great way to access it. But there's also a hard copy for those people that are tactile and like to pick things up.
Excellent.
You can get a copy like that as well.
Excellent. And we're going to show a quick clip of the A is for Attachment cover of that chapter here in a moment to our audience. And we're going to visit before we go to our last clip of this episode. But that previous clip really was illustrative how there are things not to do, or things that interfere with building attachment, because oftentimes we're told giving gifts or just make the right meal, prepare something special, you know, and sure, those things can't hurt, but you point out that overdoing that actually will damage attachment, right, Kim?
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's an extremely important point when we talk about attachment, because when we talk about, giving flowers and exchanging rings, it's easy to think that this is about gifts, and you may get the wrong idea that it's, when we talk about that, it's important how you make somebody feel, that you need to please them, or you need to work hard to please them. But I would suggest that it's actually much more important that we learn to make our partner feel safe with us. And that really can be something quite different than working to try too hard to please someone.
Excellent. I like how safety was brought up by Steve in the football story in our previous segment as well. It is very important to be safe, and it is important to have somebody trust you to feel safe, and as you point out, to focus more on being trustworthy as well in your work. So before we go to the second clip, I just wanted to point out a fun story about what you call in your work giving good face, which is basically just making it be a pleasant experience to be around you, and also to just be aware of anything that you may not notice yourself may be intimidating to someone else. So I think you two have an anecdote about that. Something with eyebrows?
Well, they actually developed a map of the human face, and they needed to of what was attractive, and they needed to do that because there was people who were actually really making big mistakes with plastic surgery and whatnot. And it was interesting what they came up with, because it's really not a beauty contest. It's really just, that our features are lined up in a way that we look human, and that this is, what is attractive to other people. So
yeah, so fitting the standard is really the thing. It's not about being the most beautiful, but it's just about fitting the standard. But for me, I have these big Mediterranean eyebrows, and in the middle, they become like horns, right? They stick up and they become sharp and very dramatic. and it makes me look mean
Yeah, and angry.
and angry. And so it's just the shape of my. I mean, really, I'm just a puppy dog, right, deep down. But
Now you are.
yeah, now I am.
Now.
But Kim just helps me keep on top of that, and eyebrows are really important because eyebrows do actually shape your facial expression, really, more than anything, apart from lips probably, but that really does shape the eyes, and it's really important. And Kim will often just grab me and say, okay, we've got to get rid of some of those eyebrows. And
I'll come after him with the tweezers.
yeah, so it is important to just make yourself to make yourself look presentable. That's absolutely important without going over the top.
Right. You don't want to walk around looking mad when you're not. And
That's
right.
I can think of a couple examples. Mine get a little out of control too, so got to watch that. We're going to speak a little bit now about a topic that is important because today a lot of people do speak of attachment, and being experts, you two wanted to delineate between healthy attachment versus obsessive attachment, which really isn't love. Did you want to speak to that a bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obsession can be the extreme of attachment. If you become obsessed with somebody, I guess the best way to describe it would be in a parenting situation. If you're obsessed with your child, what little Johnny's doing and saying and how he's dressed and how many functions he's having a day, getting obsessed is really outrageous. You can take it too far. You can make yourself look like very foolish. And there's a term for that, and the term is helicopter parenting. Probably heard of it. It means that you're hovering over the child constantly, not letting the child learn on their own. So that term helicopter parenting it's become a bit of a popular culture term over the past sort of 10 or 15 years, I guess. But it really describes something which is when people go too far, when they become obsessed with looking after their child. Now, just in the parenting situation, and we'll talk about intimate relationships too, in that parenting situation, it's very important that we have a strong attachment with our child. We give them all the unconditional love that we could possibly afford them each day. And that's, of course, a very vital part of being a parent. But when it goes too far, you become somebody who is damaging that relationship and damaging the child's ability to grow. Now, popular culture also has recently taken the theories of attachment parenting to extremes, and that, of course, with the days of modern blogs and things like that, people take information and they change it slightly, and then Chinese whispers makes it something it isn't. But attachment parenting has become a little bit perverted, I guess, people's ideas of what it is, because attachment parenting isn't about kicking your husband out of bed and just sleeping with the child for the first 12 months. It isn't about breastfeeding until the child's walking and going to school. There are outrageous things that are said about attachment theory that has got out of hand, and it's not what Kim and I are in any way recommending. It's a very important part. This A is for attachment is one chapter of the 4 things we talk about in the workbook. So it's very important not to go too far with it.
And I just wanted to add there is that really, if you become obsessional about a relationship, that's actually a sign that you actually have an insecure attachment. If you're having to text somebody 20 times a day, if you're having to check in on them all the time, this isn't actually a sign that you've got a healthy attachment with somebody. It's actually a sign that your attachment is insecure, as is someone who has obsessive jealousy. This is a sign that their attachment style is actually something that is insecure and that they actually need to work on. Because this isn't something that you can force. It's not like you can say, oh, here's a bunch of flowers and here's a picture of me, and so you should love me now and feel attached to me. It's something that actually needs to build over time and be healthy and natural.
Wonderful. I'm glad you two clarified that. There is a big difference there. So we are going to go to the clip now that is remaining for this segment, and I'm really grateful that you cleared that up, the two differences between healthy attachment and unhealthy attachment. So now we are going to our final clip when the studio is ready.
The next point that I think is really important for you to stop doing is encouraging your partner to share their feelings with you, or trying to be their counselor. I'll admit that I spent way too many hours doing this. Now, if you're doing this, I wonder if you sometimes end up feeling that it's never going to be your turn. You wonder why the relationship is always centered around your partner and around talking about their issues. And this can really leave you feeling a lot of resentment inside and a lot of emptiness inside. The things that we have to recommend do not have anything to do with you playing psychologist or playing counselor.
It's not very trust building, you know, from a guy's point of view. It's not going to build any kind of honest trust, any kind of connection between us. It's going to build resentment, and it's going to build doubt and uncertainty, the kind of doubt and uncertainty that you don't want in your relationship.
Well, I'd encourage our audience to go to thelovesafetynet.com to see more clips. You have a large body of work, Steve and Kim Cooper on the web, on the World Wide Web, as well as quite a few YouTube videos, that is. And this clip is another illustration of all the hard work that you've put together and deliver to people. So thank you so much for that. In the last few minutes we have here, I want to give you two a chance to kind of wrap up for our audience what you think the most important aspects of this chapter has been in these two DVD series regarding A is for attachment, which is the name of the workbook chapter. And then we'll get into emotional intelligence and filling in developmental gaps, etc., and all that. I'd love for you to just share with our audience what you feel is the most important, because one thing I've realized is some of the troubled relationships that seem to look like they're not looking for attachment. Perhaps they only had something modeled for them when they were younger, that, you know, they were actually trying to attach, but the only way they could figure to attach was by screaming or throwing something or, you know, nagging or what have you. So why don't we leave the audience with some tips here of what you feel is the most important nuggets here for attachment that's healthy.
Certainly, Britt, I'd love to. There's a saying I like which says, win the connection and not the argument. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, is unless you have a connection with someone, unless you have rapport with someone, unless you can see that that person is feeling positive towards you and is feeling connected with you, you really don't have much leverage with them. So turning to anger and emotional manipulation and other ways to try and get that connection back is only ever going to be counterproductive. And this is something that we really need to remember when we live together, that we need to be patient with each other. I mean, we do this with our children. If they come home late or we're upset with them, it's easy to just feel like you want to start being angry with them as soon as they walk in the door. If you do that, it's not going to work. It's going to be counterproductive. You know, as hard as it can be, it's really important that you wait. And you wait until you've got that connection established again before you bring up the issue that you need to, if there is difficult things that you need to broach.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. Steve, did you have something to add there?
Just that in one of our next chapters, talking about emotional intelligence, it ties into what we're talking about here. It's very important that, you know, we understand our emotions, and it's not easy putting, you know, attachment theory before learning about your emotions first. It's really not, you know, it would be ideal if we could learn it all together, because our emotions are very powerful, and we'll talk about that in the next shows. But when we're thinking about attachment, we're thinking about negotiating, and we're thinking about having time with each other, it's really important to have those basics there, that we're not getting carried away with our emotions, we're not getting carried away with our bad habits, that we have a basic understanding of what attachment is. It's not going too far, it's not being too obsessive, it's not wanting too much from another person. It's about just giving enough time for things to gel, for things to connect, for each other to have an attachment with each other, and that is the basis for what we need to do to learn to move forward in our relationship. So it's very basic to start with. We fill all the rest of it in later with better skills and better attachment theories and deeper theories and different things we can trial. But to have a respect for attachment is very important.
That connection.
I like that. That's very important. Win the connection, not the argument. Kim Cooper original there. That is very important. And what do you ever get from winning the argument? I've heard it said that, you know, if you act like you're on a team, you've got a shot because you are a team. If it's like if you're the 49ers and you want to win, if one person wins, the whole team needs to win. If one person loses, the whole team loses, you know. So it's very important that we do that in our relationships as well. So winning the connection, not the argument, is very important. And what do you win if you win the argument? You win usually an angry partner. you don't win anything productive.
I don't think I can claim that one as mine.
Oh, well, I like
think
it.
that was from my friend and behavioral scientist Ellis Bell.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I think you also mentioned collecting. It's important to collect people when they come into a room, and maybe we'll address that at another time. Simply put, I think you gave the example of a teacher being the most favorite teacher because she could always collect the students before doing anything. She would bring them all present emotionally and mentally. So thank you for being present with me and with our audience here today, Steve and Kim. It's just always a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Britt. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's been a wonderful segment on healthy attachment. So I am going to bid our audience goodbye and encourage them to go to thelovesafetynet.com and stopthefights.com. Thank you so much for joining us today on Passion with Kim and Steve Cooper. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.